question of how do you maintain standards?
Training, identifying and training coaches is I would say among the most important,
The
if not the
matter
most.
you should have that at as a core so you can be consistent coaching styles.
Being able
Mhm.
to express, find ways to effectively communicate on how a child is doing. I think that ownership matters. I do believe that there's people that have ownership mentalities that are, if we can get fellow franchisees together, peer platforms, so effective.
Youth Sports Insider, where passion meets opportunity.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Youth Sports Insider. I'm your host, Bill Flitter. Today we have Justin Bredeman from the CEO of Youth Brands and Soccer Shot. So, Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bill, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this discussion because you bring in a great perspective of how to grow a national brand, franchise brand, and still, hold consistency across all your coaches and every little community. It's funny, since I'm if you guys know who I am, I'm a basketball guy, and growing up and my kids played basketball. We played very little soccer. I grew up in Wisconsin when soccer, I think I remember one soccer player that we had in my high school. And I don't even think we had a soccer team. So, but when I came across soccer shots, really actually recently, now I'm seeing them everywhere. And
Ah,
so kudos to you guys for building such a strong brand. And
thank you.
to start us off, just give us a little bit of background on you, how Soccer Shots got started. What is it? Who do you cater to? So, yeah, Justin, take
Yeah,
it away.
well, thanks, Bill. I'm the CEO of Strong Youth Brands. It's a franchising platform on which Soccer Shots and Little Kickers kind of operate. So those are the consumer-facing brands. Soccer Shots is here in the US, and Little Kickers is our brand outside of the US, mainly in the UK, Canada, South Africa, Australia. We're in 25
Mhm.
countries there, 42 states with Soccer Shots. Um, we are, as I've said, a franchise system in both counts. So we've got, let's see, about 350 units on the Little Kicker side, about 340 units on Soccer Shot side, and a total of about 360 or so franchisees that operate those individual businesses. Um, just a little for those that are listening that may not know kind of what it looks like on the ground. So we're a territory-based business. So a franchisee will have an exclusive territory defined by zip codes, and within that territory, they will have multiple accounts. So we take soccer to where the children are in child care centers and preschools, parks. So we're not a bricks and mortar concept. We're going to hosted locations where they give us permission to run our programs, and where it's really convenient for families who typically have their children already in a space or in a neighborhood where they live close by. And Soccer Shots trained coach will come with all the equipment necessary for children. And I didn't mention that we are ages 2 to 8. We've got various programs that are age appropriate, and children will attend for 30, 40 minutes a week for a given period of time. And we'd have a trained coach go do the program over the course of 12, 16-week season. And and a franchisee will have multiple locations, having trained dozens of coaches going out to where those programs are. And so that's the basics of Soccer Shots. We've been at this for quite some time. We started franchising in 2005. Um, I had some experience in franchising working at Auntie Anne's hand-rolled soft pretzels. Still eat
One of
them
my
today.
daughter's favorite places.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Uh, and so my two buddies Jason Webb and Jeremy Sorzano. They're the founders of Soccer Shots. The three of us played D3 soccer together at little Messiah College, now Messiah University. It's a private college right outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Little claim to fame. They started winning national championships after we attended. 11 and 17 years, but it was only four
Wow.
years after we had graduated. But still, great experience in sport and with soccer there. Made, lifetime friends and some really wonderful business partners in Jason and Jeremy. So they started it. They were playing semi-professional soccer down in
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte. And that's where they kind of stumbled upon this concept of taking soccer to where the kids were in child care centers. And so little by little, inch by inch, we've put together a franchise system and had some really wonderful franchisees who have allowed us to scale the way that we have. Um, and then back in 2021, we had an investor come alongside of us that enabled us to create stronger youth brands and bring on Little Kickers. And so we've had Little Kickers. My team, the franchise support team, has supported Little Kickers and Soccer Shots for the past, close to 3 years.
Yeah, good for you. Congrats on that growth. That's pretty amazing. And it's I think the first point is it didn't happen overnight. This has been
Wow.
since 2005, and then you took sounds like a bigger investment in 2021. So quite a few years in between that. But impressive because maintaining quality has to be an issue. And several times you brought up, you have a trained coach. So how do you train your coaches? And, maybe this is a separate question, but I'm interested in starting a franchise. What do I do? How do I start? And maybe just walk us quickly through those steps.
Yeah. So, from the early days, we established that we were going to continue to lean into and invest in the three C's. So, coaching, curriculum, and communication. That
Mhm.
these kind of three pillars were critical for us as an organization to focus on. That combination of having a caring, well-trained coach, following, age-appropriate curriculum, and that we are communicating with parents, families. That combination was a combination for success. And
Hmm.
so, identifying and training coaches is, I would say, among the most important, if not the most important aspect of this. And so we spent a lot of time in developing kind of what's the profile of person that we'd like to
Mm, right.
recruiting.
Yeah. Hmm.
We've developed, training programs online as well as in the field. So there's a pretty stringent method to follow for candidates to become Soccer Shots coaches.
Okay.
What it really, I think, is contingent upon for us, and you're talking to someone who's responsible for identifying, my team is identifying and vetting and training our franchise partners, our
Yeah.
franchise, um, because they're the ones that are taking those tools and applying them in their local community. And so, what we found is if we're able to find the right franchisee and that ownership mentality, it goes a long way in ensuring that they are finding the right people, they're training up the right people, and that our programs are in fact consistent, throughout the system. I don't want to limit or understate the importance of curriculum as well.
Hmm.
I think that we've invested heavily in that side of things as well. So having a team led by a woman who's has her early childhood education degrees. She's been working with children ages 2 to 8 for the last 15 years. She was working at Goddard schools prior to coming to Soccer Shots, and so just making sure that we've got the curriculum and the kind of coach training
Yeah.
piece square has been, yeah, vital. You also said something about like what happens when you become a franchisee. Um,
Or even just like Yeah, well, let me step back and stop you for a second. So,
Yeah.
what I heard so far, I was just taking notes as you were speaking about it, is you you obviously have to have some standards and operational systems in place. The one thing you mentioned was there is a profile for someone you're looking for. So that's one system, right? And do they fit? Second is the three C's, right? Is that what you called it? Yeah, the
Yeah.
three C's,
Yeah.
right? That's another kind of system, right? And the reason I'm kind of drilling down into these things or thinking about them is if whether you have maybe just, you're a small local program with four teams, you should have that, or a large national, franchise, right? It doesn't matter. You should have that as a core so you can be consistent in your the coaching styles, um, in expanding and growth ideas too.
Yeah.
So
Well, Bill, I think one of the challenges that I think any club, youth club probably faces, and
yeah,
Soccer Shots has continued to work at like how to solve for this, is how do you scale? How do you
yeah, yeah,
ensure that you're recruiting the right coaches, training them appropriately, and that season in, season out, year in, year out, that there's consistency.
that's right. That's got to be
And
very difficult.
and it is. And I think, we are, I think what we've recognized is that you're going to have turnover. And you're also going to have kind of a unicorn from time to time. I've talked about this, a parent who's played at the highest level, who loves kids, who's fantastic at communicating with them, who is prepared, who's wonderful with parents. And you're like, yeah, that does happen from time to time, but you can't bet on that.
Right, right,
So,
right,
so
right.
how do you find,
Uh,
people who are core value fits, right? And then making sure
hmm
what your culture is, your core values are, established and articulated, and that we're kind of testing for those. And then do we have, a plan for how we routinely bring coaches through? So at the end of that process, there's some uniformity. Now we all have our own characteristics. We all have
That's
our own
right. Yeah.
personalities as coaches and as people, and it's not to mute that, but it's simply to like prep people for, yeah, in our case, to go into, childcare centers or into parks and work with 3 and 4 year olds.
Yeah.
And you're going to encounter, and
Yeah.
there's a plan, and then you get punched in the face, right? There's like, how do
Yeah.
you, how do you,
Right.
so, we've over the years, a big part of what we've done is, learning through some of our experience,
Yeah.
but preparing and training our franchisees to recruit and train coaches well, um, so that there's greater consistency. And listen, the children are getting a good, great experience, and the
Yeah.
parents are remarking about it. And that's something that we have to do and continue to lean into and evolve. But
So can
I
you
think
go into, oh, I was going to ask you a question about diving into, so I just want to make sure I understand how the model works is I'm a franchise owner. I have a territory and then and I'm sure like maybe I live in the Bay Area. Just take the Bay Area for example, big area, right? You got, San Jose to, San Francisco to Sacramento, right? So within that territory, there might be three or four franchisees with multiple teams. Is that kind of the idea, the concept?
so. The basics are we award territories of approximately 500,000 people. So in
Okay.
our experience, we have found that there are, plenty of families who have children of our age group that
Yep.
would qualify as a legitimate business.
Yeah.
So you would have your territory. We've got software to map that out. We have ways of identifying where, child care centers are, where ideal places to put park or public programs located
Mm-hmm.
close to, neighborhoods that would support soccer shots. Um, and then we take, you and if you had a key member or something, would come through a week of training at our home office. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
group training,
Nice.
And so kind of all things required to operate a soccer shots franchise from, of course, coach recruitment and training to marketing to accounting to how our software works, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, you would get a franchise business consultant or an FBC kind of assigned to you. So he or she would be kind of your account manager or somebody that you'd go to for like
Yeah.
all
Okay.
things. And then from there, that person would act as a conduit to the rest of our team to kind of find answers, to provide support in particular areas of your business. And that's kind of ongoing throughout.
Yeah. In there's 101 reasons not to do this business. Right? I mean, if you stopped and thought about it from day one, it's like, oh my gosh, like it is a huge undertaking. And not only that, you're working with kids, there's that extra layer of, right, scrutiny that you have to go through. And then, we've all seen the extreme of bad characters, right, with kids and then finding places and the venues to host and again I just like to understand that scale and of what you guys have done is pretty impressive and to overcome all of those hurdles.
Bill, you're not going to be signing. I'm not going to hire you for a Fran Dev team. You're not selling franchise right now. But no, you're right. You're right. I mean, I think
Yeah,
listen, it's not, I'd say our business is simple, but it's not easy. And as much as,
right, yeah,
you know, getting into locations, I've got a way of doing that to, promoting the program to, I think recruiting and training coaches and working with children. It's tremendously satisfying though. There's
oh
so
my
much
gosh, absolutely,
rewarding.
yeah, yeah,
I know you've coached a lot. I've
yeah,
coached with soccer shots, outside of soccer shots, coached my two sons for 11 years. Have worked within a volunteer um, organization where well-meaning people are trying, but I remember the first time that I started coaching at the time he was just out of soccer shots and he was getting into, he's like 8 years old. And I was given a bag of balls and the bottom of that bag was a
yeah,
drills from literally 1991. I mean, it was just like a paper back here, soccer drills, and here you go. Good luck. And I think, while I had a great experience and I figured it out and played, D3 soccer and, I think was an okay coach. Um, I realized that like there's a lot of well-meaning people who do love children that
yeah,
want to get, but they're maybe not prepped enough. They're not given enough training, right? Or enough
yep,
support.
yeah,
So I think, you know, um, in this business, you do have to love the children. You also have to have a mind for, I think, developing people and for us, in terms of a franchise owner, is, following standard operating procedures. And that takes a lot of the guesswork out of this business. Still does not, it requires hard work and hustle. And, you have to be developed as a leader, but it can be done.
uh, and that goes to my question of how do you maintain standards?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a there's a couple of things. I've mentioned a few of them where it really upfront selection is huge. I'd say for us, there's no bigger decision we make as an organization as to who we choose as a franchise partner.
Hmm.
From there comes training. And then there's some measures of accountability. There's some things that, we have to, as a franchisor, to protect the brand, to ensure that there's
Right, yeah,
consistent experience. None of these that I'll share are like foolproof. There's one of the, I think, advantages of our concept is that we're going to where the children are. So we are, there's a convenience factor, but there's also some challenges when it comes to kind of ensuring consistency because we're in dozens
hmm,
of locations within
that's right, yeah,
and yet our particular business model, there's always adults watching. So we're in a public program.
that's
We
true.
a couple years ago instituted something called the Net Promoter Score or
Hmm.
NPS. So it's something we send out to all parents to rate their experience with soccer shots. Each of our coaches then gets what's an NPS score.
Hmm.
So, each coach is now looking at how they're being rated by the parents. Um, we are coaching our franchisees to have, once a season to visit each coach
Mm.
evaluation form, be able to fill that out and give feedback to a coach. Um, we ourselves, run coach training at ops training. So encourage and prompt certain franchise owners to kind of send people to that so they're properly prepared for that. And so a number of measures for that. And then, if the NPS scores are low, we investigate. We're
Yeah.
asking questions and digging deeper into what's going on in that business and working to correct that.
So in that example, the NPS score, so parents give the coach, then so the coach is in my franchise. The franchise owner sees all of that, and then you see all of those scores as well at the
Yeah,
organizational level.
we
Yeah,
do.
which is smart.
So
So
there's scores. Those are helpful. Comments are super helpful.
comments, yeah, that
We
open-ended.
really,
Yeah.
we've got the Listen 360, which is the vendor partner that we work with, is fantastic.
Who is that? I'm sorry, what was the
Listen
name?
360.
Okay, yep. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really great. Their platform
Hmm.
is fantastic for us. And there's tools that allow us to kind of identify recurring themes within comments, which
Mm.
use for attaboys. Great, good stuff.
Yeah.
Huh. Here's some things in regards to coaches not starting on time, or
Mm.
too many coaches in a given season, or whatever the case may be. You start picking up on themes as well as just individual maybe challenges or reasons for kudos.
Yeah, I do the same thing. With my teams. I'm the development or the director of a girls basketball program, and we
Okay.
have we have 10 teams right now. So it's brand new, just started. The
What,
boys
what age
have
group is it, did you say?
this is basically third grade through eighth. Well, high school now. We just added high school, so
Okay.
starting high school in the right after the high school season ends, which is coming up here real soon.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I send out a survey asking, what's your experience? And I do it. I'm going to do it twice in the kind of in the beginning, first couple of weeks, just even like I was really curious, like because we're a brand new program on the girls' side, how did our sign up process go? What's your experience been so far up to this date, the tryout? So I did this right post tryouts, and we had open-ended questions. We had, what's important to you as a parent? And I had a bunch of different things. And, from, rate these things, 1 through 5, winning, right? Where does winning fall in, teamwork and, growing the player's confidence. So a bunch of those types of things.
Huh.
Little surprised maybe about the results on
Oh,
that, which
really?
was
I'm on
winning.
the edge of my seat. What did you learn?
Well, winning was higher than I expected it to be. It wasn't number one, but I think it was in the top
Yeah,
three.
yeah.
Um, and maybe that was my, hoping that, you know, it's not about that, right? It's
Right.
important, but it's not about that. The other one that I think that was surprising too was because we hear this question come up a lot in the championship game. Okay, for example, um, would you rather keep the best five players, or it's a championship game? Would you rather keep the best five players in or have equal playing time?
Hmm.
Overwhelming, the response was keep the best five players in to basically have a better chance of winning the championship than rotating other players in. And then the big question for me was just, like an NPS score. We followed up with everything below a certain number and with the individual parents saying, yeah, we take this seriously. One mom has known me forever. She goes, I did that because I didn't think you were going to look. Or that you were looking.
test. You
Yeah,
passed.
she was testing me, right?
Yeah.
And she laughed. And I said, "You gave me, I think it was a 3." I said, "I've known you forever. I coached both of your kids. Like, one of them, ended up playing varsity as a freshman. Didn't I do a good, Yeah. So she's, wow, you take it serious?" I'm like, absolutely take it
Absolutely.
seriously.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think those types of things are really important. And now you look at your scale, they have to be a crucial part of that
Well,
feedback loop that you guys get.
it is. I mean, I think this is one of the things that, at least in my experience, and once again, I don't want to paint in too broad brush strokes.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of organizations, youth organizations, where they don't have the bandwidth or the ability to like
Yeah.
truly pull what parents want, how they're doing, and being able to get that kind of input so that you can adjust and you can change if you need to, or you can augment something that you're currently doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, we've not too long ago, I was reading this, I don't know, Jeff Bezos had made this quote a long time ago about being asked what's going to change in the next 10 years. And he answered the question, he says, well, I'm rarely asked the question of what's not going to change in the next 10 years. And then he goes on to talk about, the speed of service or delivery for goods and the cost of
Yeah.
goods. Who's going to complain about them being too little or things coming too fast? And, so you can kind of see that reflected in Amazon. And I was thinking about, like, for us, when it comes to youth sports, like what are the immutable principles that no matter what we're doing, who or what sport. And I came across, four, maybe there's more. I was like, no parent has ever said my coach or the organization cared too much about my kid.
That's right.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
Yeah,
never going to
yeah,
happen.
never.
Like, so it's like, okay,
Right.
how
Yeah,
do we imply and how do we communicate care? Like, no one's
yeah.
ever said, man, my coach is too competent. He knows too much. Can't, you're like, okay, so
Right.
care and competence, those are immutable.
Yeah.
We need to lean into those. I think communication, like, being able
Hmm.
to express, find ways to effectively communicate on how a child is doing, how they're progressing, what we're seeing in them, how we're praising them, maybe some areas of growth, um, to kind of what's coming up next. I think that communication, that's of our three C's, if I were to be honest, that's one that's really, we continue to grind on and try to figure out. And let's face it, like, each family, each parent has their own means and mode of preferred communication. So there's complexity with that.
Right. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the
yeah.
fourth one for us is convenience. I mean, this is something we often have overlooked for soccer
Hmm.
shots, but I think it's been key to our relative success. It's like, never has a parent said, "Man, this is too convenient. It's too easy to register. Man, you guys are too
Yeah.
close. Like, I
Yeah.
wish I could
Yeah.
take a kid
Yeah.
further." It's like, so those, to me, those four things are like immutable. And like, how can we as sports people, administrators, coaches, whatever, really kind of hone in on those things? Um, and I don't know if you ever can kind of get there and do it perfectly, but
Yeah. And I 100% agree. The communication piece, I think, is one of of course, you got to have caring coaches. They have to know what they're doing. But I think you just take those top three that you mentioned, and if you're good at the first two and the communication is spot on, it can compensate for some of the maybe where you're lacking in the sport. But I just seen that just even, sending out a weekly text email of, hey, this is what we did last week. This is what we're doing this week, or right, or anything that just lets the parents inside so they stop the communication on the sidelines of, well, what are they doing? Did and that's where it just escalates into, we've seen that happen on the sidelines, right? Where them not
well,
knowing, and then
yeah.
they just make stuff up that's not true. So,
And it's part of it. It's like, it's hard because, like, of course, if you're a coach or administrator, like, you're pouring yourself into, training the kids or the practices or the games. And, think about what I'm going to
yeah,
tell the kids at halftime or at the end of the game. And it's easy, I think, or maybe it's tough to kind of expect, I'd say, great communication with parents. But I would say there's something that coach of my kids did.
Hmm.
Shout him out right now, Dan Wagner. He's a head coach for Franklin and Marshall, D3 men's soccer for the last 26 years, and he was coaching my younger son, who plays at a pretty high level. And he admittedly is not a great writer, like so he makes a lot of spelling mistakes, but he discovered something called Voxer that
Oh,
he's
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
go on after
yeah,
practice as he's
yeah,
driving home. He would give
yeah.
a narrative of practice, what they worked on, what
No,
they're
oh, that's a good
trying to
idea.
do. And it was broadcast to all the families that signed up. Now this was brilliant. The feature was that you couldn't respond to him, at least
Right,
not to the group,
right,
right?
right,
But,
right.
but,
Yeah.
but I was like, you could hear his tone of voice. You could talk about what they're trying at the end of a game. He could give a quick recap of what he
Mm,
told the boys. And I thought,
yeah.
it's a really brilliant way to kind of keep
It's a
clear
great idea.
communication, hear literally the voice of the coach, and be able to just, showcase what he knew and what he was trying and what he was proud of and what are the challenges. So anyway, I thought that was a really great kind of thing that he was doing to perpetuate communication with parents.
Yeah, that's the first I've ever heard someone using Vox that way, and I think that's a great use of it. And again, this is a good segue into technology. So what does your technology stack look like? You mentioned you definitely, you use Listen 360, but what else is in that stack?
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that we've invested in considerably over the last
Imagine. Yeah.
year. We were back at it, Bill, when I remember one of our meetings we were discussing is the internet for real? Like, is this going to stay? Online registrations. We used to take paper
Oh
registrations,
my
checks, and
gosh.
cash, and so we've come a long way.
Yeah.
But we definitely have identified that, like, especially with the franchise system, this is kind of maybe one of the benefits where you have, local ownership and knowledge and work ethic and pride, but you also have a larger national organization that's able to pool resources to continue to
Hmm.
invest in technology. I'm really excited about a current project that we're working on right now with NBC Sports Motion. They've been working with us over the last year and tailoring their platform for us for the online registration and kind of back office work. Um, Salesforce is also
Oh,
part of
really?
that.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
using their marketing cloud. Um, and so that's something we're rolling out this year,
Hmm.
which really will enhance the way that we do communicate with parents, with those that, for the time being, choose not to enroll their child in soccer shots, kind of pathways for communication there. That's big. Um, we have, in addition, Career Plug. Career Plug is a very useful tool that allows us to franchisees to post, job postings for
Mm-hmm.
recruiting coaches. So it's an HR portal that's very helpful. Let's see. Um, there's some software that we use for downloading or uploading profit and loss statements monthly, and for us to kind of create reports for our franchisees so they can kind of look at their business relative to peers. So there's a number of things that
Mm-hmm.
the communication piece, even the NBC, like finally getting an app that allows push notifications to parents and short videos. And of course, they have to opt in for all that good stuff.
Right,
Uh,
right,
but
yeah.
how do we ensure that parents are learning about what's going on with their children, with the program, and kind of getting back to something that I have a real passion for is like, how do we earn kind of the privilege to speak to parents about just other things, when it comes to like being proper parents on the sideline, right? I don't want to overstep our bounds of
Right.
being, supplemental parents, but I do think
Or
there's
preachy, right?
preachy. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like,
yeah,
but there's things that I think that we can kind of come alongside of and reinforce. We do
yeah.
that with our program with character words and concepts. And I just want to I'd love for us to continue to work at being yeah, a trusted voice that's helpful and helping equip parents and give them tools to relate well to their children.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can't imagine again that, stringing that technology stack together and
Yeah,
we use
what's
league apps
oh
to
yeah.
manage our, and we're finding limitations with that right now when again we have, I don't know, 500 parents or so, part of our program, 500 families. So even, we're just running into some limitations that in the communication is the huge thing. And the back end work. So I can't even imagine the scale at which you guys have and have to deal with. So that's impressive again. Dive
That's
into you talked about the data analysis and you want your franchisees and they want their coaches to succeed. So, big if I kind of step back, it's like, yeah, I've ran my own program before. I decided to combine with another program they didn't have a girls program, coach girls. They didn't have a girls basketball program. They're much bigger. Um, One thing that took away from me, which I was like glad, which was contracts on gym space
okay.
and just the daily like financial side of the business and really spending. I just wanted to coach, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
wanted and create a program that I thought was the right type of program that should exist, right? And that's all I really wanted to do. And then, right, but as you know, you have a small business, that's not the only thing right, you need to focus on. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're basically allowing your soccer coaches to do just that, to coach, focus on the kids and their families. The financial burden, the software you use, that's all centralized, and then you're helping them analyze their business. Is it profitable? What could you do? What could we do to help you? Is that how I understand? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. I mean, there's a
Real
number.
simple stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
listen, I think, you know, you can imagine you described a lot of our franchise candidates who have a passion for children. They want to
Hmm.
coach or they're great at coaching. And I think that's really fantastic. And what we've gotten to become a little more, I don't know if it's savvy or if it's just kind of like through experience and through stubbing our toe from time to time, becoming a lot more intentional of investigating like what is the makeup of this person and kind of what are their strengths, what really are their passions, um, and that being a great coach doesn't mean you're going to be a wonderful administrator and
Hmm.
or you want to hire and train dozens of coaches because most of our franchise owners who are running, pretty large businesses no longer coach. There's a transition from like a one-man band or one-person
Hmm.
band to,
Yeah.
say, a conductor, right?
Right. Right. Yep. Yep.
It's okay to be a one-man band, but I'd also
Yeah.
say it doesn't it then you're somewhat restricted to, a certain size program or business. Um, if you want to, if you want to grow and scale, then you have to get good at identifying talent and then training that talent and, you know, growing it and holding folks accountable. And in our, business too, it's like because we're not bricks and mortar, we are, you have to go into scenarios and talk to people about saying yes to soccer shots. And so there's, management of those accounts. And
Hmm.
so there's a number of aspects to the business that, yeah, we now are, and listen, our training programs look very different 7 years ago than they do today. I
I would
think we're
imagine.
pretty
Right.
good at
Yeah.
getting people on board and launching. But as folks have gotten in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, this year we're celebrating our 20th year. Um, they're, they're encountering situations and issues and challenges and opportunities that we had never thought of, 5
Mm,
years
yeah.
ago. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to evolve kind of our support of franchise owners. And technology you've mentioned is one of those areas that we feel like we can come alongside of and really equip franchisees in ways that maybe individuals could not. So,
Well, and you must spend, or who's, well, I should ask it as a question, is who spends the time? Is it the franchisee owner or you of securing, looking at the venues where where the kids are at, the daycares, the spaces, right?
yep, we have so we have we've been you can't have a soccer shots really unless you're able to get somebody to say yes to hosting it. So that big part of, our training is, I'd say, business development or,
Okay.
account during accounts. So we have, yeah, through the training, there's classroom training, and then we actually do send someone out to the field to work with the franchise owners to establish business, to walk in and have conversations with childcare directors. Um, what has happened over the years is we're able to have some success kind of on the ground. But a lot of these centers are chains, some of our franchises, some of them are.
Mm,
And so we got
hmm.
to a critical mass that allowed us to go to their headquarters and say, hey, we're here. This is what we offer. We're working in so many of your centers. Would you be willing to have like a preferred vendor status that would allow us to kind of negotiate terms so that your daycare, child care directors will know what those terms are? You know what those terms are.
Mm, hmm.
Most of them do involve some revenue share, kind of allowing us to kind of fish their pond. And so that is a big part of the business,
Yeah.
acquiring and then maintaining those locations.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay, so again, going back to that is I can't have a franchise unless I create opportunities with a daycare or whatever. I can't just start my team and go to the local park and rent the park out and correct?
Well, no, because what now we have two kind of lines of business. One is, I'd
Okay.
say, private, which are child cares and preschools. So those are places that have to give us permission, I say, to fish their pond, right? They're saying,
Okay. Yep. Hmm.
what you're doing is great, and we say we're going to send a coach in to run soccer shots at your location on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock. Parents sign their child up, and then for the next 12 weeks, that's what happens there.
Yeah.
Then the public is within like parks, for example. So
Right. Okay.
where, or could be, the left field in a softball field at a church, and they're allowing us to run one of the great things about soccer, of course, as you will know, is like you can play on a lot of different surfaces. So it's
Right.
flexible as to where
Hmm.
but that public place then doesn't then limit us to only the families within that child care center that we're marketing to. We now have neighborhoods and we
Right.
have other places. So there's more traditional ways of getting the word out about the program at, ABC Park in a particular neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And so I'm curious. So I want to start basketball shots. Okay. So, okay. And what advice would you give me? And I want to franchise it. I want to basically copy everything you've done and learned over the 20 years, but for a different sport, basketball. Okay. So what would you tell me to do? Like
Trade
what
secrets. You want me to give me all the
no,
things
I
we
know.
did in 20 years? You want to get
20
a crib
years.
notes
Boil
to
it
get,
all down into
no,
three
that's
key
fine.
bullet points, you know. No, no.
Certain.
But you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I just like give me like help me understand like really again, a lot of our listeners are, there might be clubs that, are thinking about a new business model, right? And
Yeah.
they're trying to grow and across multiple different sports. Um, I guess what words of advice would you happen to give them?
So, a couple things. And I don't know if this is
If it was
fully
me, I say don't do it, right?
fully exhaustive. Yeah, run the other way. There's got to be
Run
an
the
easy
other way.
way.
Yeah.
Um, I I think there's a couple things that kind of come to mind, and these
Yeah.
are, learnings over the years. One of which some of this may not be an epiphanal, like, right? It's kind of no doubt, but
Yeah.
um, I really think that like the people selection piece is huge. I have benefited greatly from the right partners with Jason and Jeremy, with the right partners as franchisees. Um, and then the second part of that, and part of that, I did a couple things. One is
Yeah.
I think really establishing like your core values are important. I just do, and I think that understanding like what those are for your organization, and then really drilling down that you're recruiting and finding people who fit that
Hmm.
is super important. I think there's something that we've done that I think is good for any organization, and that is establishing kind of an operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Start bringing people in, knowing how things work is important. Most organizations, we did this in the early days of just we kind of muck and grind and sort of pieced it together of like, hey, we need a meeting here. Here's how we kind of put together agenda. And we followed EOS. There's a book called Traction, Entrepreneur Operating System. EOS is what it's
Mm.
called. It's a book called Traction. So you like read from the same book on what do meetings look like? What does planning look like? What does goal setting look
Interesting.
like?
Yeah.
And so that has been super helpful for us, but also just for franchising, because I think every small business needs an operating system, and there are several out there. And I'm not saying EOS is the best, but it's one that we follow. Um, um, Maybe the last thing. This is something that is not as tangible, but something I've looked in the mirror of the years and asked the question. Yeah, am I a leader worth following?
Mm. Mm.
Am
Yeah.
I someone who is attracting the right people, retaining the right people? Am I challenging and supportive to people who work on my team? Um, you know, what I've learned from our franchise system is it's really hard for everybody to recruit and find great people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those that are building really strong businesses or organizations somehow, some way, find a way to get great people and get enough of them. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, whoever's at the top. And so
I
I don't
agree.
know, Bill. I mean, I think a few things there that I
And
would
I'm
kind
glad you said th those are the simple, quote unquote, simple things, right? They're not, they're not easy, and we often take those things for granted. There wasn't much, like, you didn't dive into the business yet, right? If we continue the conversation, you'd probably start talking about systems and blah, 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 blah. But you're really talking about a lot of the people stuff that is really important, even before you start doing what's my tech stack going to look like, and so.
because Bill, I think one maybe I add to that because I think what's happened if you get the right people, there's an old book, an old but goodie, good to great. It's like first who
Oh
then
yeah,
what.
right.
It's
Yeah.
like I don't have all the answers, but I tell you
Right.
what, Jason and
Yeah.
Jim, who are good partners, who are thinking things differently, like collaboratively, we
Yeah.
found some good answers to some tough questions. When I get good franchisees on, guess what? They're on committees. They're speaking into the development of
Mm,
curriculum. They're speaking.
yeah,
So like part of what I think happens too is hey, what does that mean for, organization? Hey, if you've got a promoter that's a parent, I don't know,
that's right.
take them to breakfast once a month to kind of pick their
Yeah.
brain on their experience and what they might bring to the table for, your organization, your program. So I think the people, but it's like, what are you able to glean often from those people as well that gets you to a better place?
Yeah, and I think that's really important part that you said are those advisors. You have advisors and the parents are advisors, right? So you have it at every level, and they can a lot of times look at the same problem that we stare at and just are racking our brains at and come in with this amazing answer that was right there in front of us all the time, right? It's really, I think that's really important. One of the questions I should have asked you way up in the beginning was uh why? So I've talked to a lot of operators. Some there I think it might be the first franchise kind of model. Other
Okay.
ones, they they're just opening up in other cities and they just go recruit a coach, bring the coach in. Everything else is the same. Like they bring them in to train, they have things that they do, but they're really responsible. I mean, they're not franchising. So
Yeah.
why did you choose the franchise model? And when? Did that start from the very beginning or was it later stage?
Yeah, a couple reasons. I mean, one, I mentioned that I was with Annie Ann's for close
Mm,
to 9 years. I got to
hmm
see what was a healthy franchise system kind of in action. And I think there's a number of benefits, advantages to this. One is I think that ownership matters. I do believe that there's people who have ownership mentalities that are employees, and that's awesome. That's
Right.
something
Yeah.
we promote.
hmm
But I think when it comes to like scaling and serving for us as many children as we can,
hmm
we can't be a 2 weeks notice away from losing a key member. Our key people, our key stakeholders are our franchise partners.
Mm. It's a
And
good
so
point. Yeah.
when we have an extensive vetting process and they're investing in it and they are making a living doing it and they're part of the community and their reputation is on that like I haven't found a model that works better than that
Mm-hmm. hmm
in terms of staying power and in terms of like just impact. And so that
Yeah.
goes to another thing. It's like there's no way that we'd be serving, 750,000 children this year without our franchisees. I mean, we could run, I think, really good, strong local businesses and programs, and that's notable. But our vision was that we would you know, replicate, multiply, and really impact as many lives as we could. Um, and then I think that the structure allows for some of which I've hinted at. I've commented about the benefits, I think, of local ownership, but also corporately. So what happens is that, we being the franchisor, have the
hmm
ability to kind of have, there's a financial return through royalties and through merchandise purchases through us that we're reinvesting. And so, to have a team of three that's working on our curriculum and coach training for both systems is something that at the local level, it's not done, right?
Yeah.
The technology that I mentioned,
Right.
like us
Right.
having
Right.
a dedicated IT team or tech team working
That's right.
NBC and Salesforce is something the local franchisee don't have the resources to do. But for us to do those things really gives a great advantage if we're able to kind of do
That's
well
right.
in pooling those resources, investing, and then returning those things to the locals, to local franchise owners to run their businesses more efficiently or to like, impact children better or to communicate well with parents. And so when that works in harmony, it's a strong thing. And then maybe the last thing is just peer to peer, like knowing one of our responsibilities. I don't have all the answers. My team doesn't have all
Yeah.
the answers. No one franchisee has. And yet, if we can get fellow franchisees together, peer platforms, so effective. I mean, I
Yeah.
know when you get together and you're talking with other coaches or administrators, it's just, if nothing else, it's encouraging or a shoulder to cry on.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
mostly what comes out are these little nuggets, right? Little
Right.
things you learn or
Right.
ways you
Yeah.
stub your toe, don't do that. And so that's what we do with conventions and, regional meetings is get our franchisees together, get them talking,
Right. Yeah,
talk
that's
about.
amazing. Yeah, that
There
totally
you
makes
go.
sense.
Long-winded answer to why we
No,
franchise.
it actually no, it was, I love the way you described that and you really nailed really what's important, I think, in youth sports. And the model that I always questioned was the other model, which is I'm just growing, I'm finding a coach in this area, I'm paying that coach directly. I'm thinking, well, if I know anything about my area, and you're going to pay me some stipend. I think if I did it on my own, I could probably make it. Yeah, I might struggle with maybe some of the operational, but man, I could probably double or triple what I make. So, I've gotten approached by it. I'm like, why would I give that up?
Right.
I'll limp okay on the operational side, right? I don't like to do it. I'll do it, but you're, you know, you're talking of you're going to decrease my revenue by 10x. Like, yeah, you better be really good, right?
Yeah.
Versus what you're saying, the franchisees got an upside. Better they are, the more
And
opportunities they
listen,
have.
we have to provide value as a franchise as
That's
well,
right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's there is a financial arrangement where we receive royalties on revenue. Um, and, in the calculus of a franchise candidate or an operator, they have to say, hey, what I'm paying, am I getting in return what I expect? And is it greater than what I could do it on my own? I
Yeah.
would say in our particular line of business, I've said this, but I don't think that the barrier to entry is all that great, but I think a barrier to scale is great.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
to me has been something that, we've been able to sort of
That's
overcome and
right.
equip,
Yeah.
capable operators.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I look at a lot of these young coaches and like, oh, I played in college, so therefore I can coach. And all I need, in case of basketball, is a hoop and a ball. Or, you know what? Don't even, I just need a hoop because I'll have the kids bring the ball. Well, great, but now try to scale that, right? And maybe you're fine with one team, great. Then, but yeah, it's hard to scale. I don't care if it's soccer or tech, right? It's hard to scale. Last question, hopefully last question. I could talk to you for about this forever. I mean, this has been a great opportunity to learn the franchise model. But the one thing you didn't bring up was, just efficiencies of scale too. I would imagine in uniforms, balls, ball bags, cones, right? Do you supply that, or do you have vendor relationships in that area as well?
Yeah, quick answer is yes. I
Yeah.
mean, clearly with volume comes discount.
750,000 kids, is that what you said?
So
This
we
is
have, yeah, so
yeah, it's
we're
amazing.
always finding what's interesting is there you'd think that there'd be just a whole host of options for us at that level, and the fact of the matter is that you get to a place where there's fewer and fewer options, and so we're excited about our current vendor partners.
Mhm.
Big part of what we're doing, yeah, so of course
Of
soccer
course, so
ball
you got yeah,
and
yeah,
cones and goals and
yeah,
youth jerseys.
right.
Got a burgeoning direct to consumer, side of the business where parents can order stuff through us.
Hmm.
To coach's uniform, I mean, we made a decision a couple of years ago to go with Nike. They have a pretty strong line for men and women, which we've got, approximately 50% of our coaches are women, and that was really
Awesome.
important to us, where we have
Yeah.
garments for both men and women. But yeah, it's a big part of and an advantage, I think, to being a franchise owner too,
Mhm.
buying, simplifying and lowering costs where we can.
Yeah. And you touched upon it, but what are you most excited about, like maybe the operational innovation side as a franchise and as a company? Like what are you looking at implementing in the next couple of years? Again, you don't have to go into any detail, but if you just, I don't want to give away any trade secrets, so
Well, maybe I'll retrace my steps on a couple of things.
yeah.
I've mentioned that I think our communication piece has not been as robust as it could be, and I think
Hmm.
technology plays a part in that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that we've got a partner with Salesforce and NBC that are powerhouses that
Yeah. Yeah.
the platforms, but also kind of the chops within their teams to grow with us, anticipate our needs, work with us to understand what parents want, and that's really something that yeah, I just want to make sure that we're listening to and responsive to families and parents. I'm excited about that. I'm also excited just in right now we're pouring ourselves into like revamping our coaches training.
Mm. Yeah.
We've incrementally evolved it. I think we've got a team right now in place that, once again, I think they know their stuff. I think they are working right now with committees, so groups of franchisees, kind of
Mm.
getting input on that. And I think that is super important for us and ongoing Um, yeah, quality. I think that's yeah, tremendously important. I'm also we've got I can't share any real details, but I think with hosting the 2026 World Cup, it can mean
Mm,
big things for us as a youth
yeah.
soccer organization and association with some prominent partners. And obviously the game will have a very high profile here in
Right.
the United States and around the world. So that could also mean some things for us at Little Kickers.
Yeah, amazing. Uh, and where, if we have a coach or a franchisee owner, potential owner, right, wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Real simple. Go to soccershots.com. We have a very navigable website there. So if you're interested in enrolling your child, the simple way to find kind of programs within your area. And if you're interested in franchising, there's a tab there for that as well. So choose your adventure.
Justin, thank you so much for being on the program today. We really appreciate your insight. I know I learned a lot. It was extremely helpful, and I'm sure our listeners will find the info just as helpful. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Phil, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
All right. All right. If you're looking to start a Shocker Shots, you heard it here from Justin. Go to soccershots.com for all the information and stay tuned for some more amazing interviews coming up.